Hello and welcome to Switch Scheme. Welcome back to my top 100 Nintendo Switch games of all time as of 2024. In this video, we will be covering my numbers 61 through 70. Now, you're already going to notice that the layout of this video is slightly different. Unfortunately, my camera died and I need to get a new one, so for now we go back to the old school way of doing videos, which having me off screen might be a benefit for some. The Bayonetta giveaway is still on, just comment on this video to enter, and if you enjoy the content, drop a like and sub, it helps me immensely. If you disagree with something on the list, let me know in a respectful manner down below how you would change it. With all that out of the way, let's get into today's list. I initially had never heard of this game, but I was watching a video of US imports that are worth your time and Katana Kami was on their list. I looked it up and oh boy was I happy I got a copy. It's basically an isometric hack and slash, but for some reason its simplicity is what I like about it. The story sees a local blacksmith who is in debt get mixed up with some thugs who kidnap his daughter in order to settle it. You, as the hero of the story, decide to help, but only if you can take her in marriage. A rather odd choice of our hero, but it is what it is. The way it works is you go into the portal called the Jikai and you battle all the baddies until you locate an exit and leave. It's got a very roguelike feel to it, where each time you enter the Jikai, it will progressively get harder and harder, and if you die, you lose all your gear and pickups, at least until you make your way back into where your dead body was and grab it, if you can. Even though the combat itself is simple, I like to think of it similar to a Dark Souls or Elden Ring type thing, where the combat is simplistic in design, but each weapon you use changes up how it works. It helps keep the combat fresh with each new battle implement that you find, and that's why I personally enjoy it. On the other hand though, one of the issues that I have that keeps it in the back 50 is that the end game isn't very satisfying. It's pretty much just make enough money to pay off the debt and you win the game. It's not beat the big bad, stop the big bad from kidnapping or nothing like that. It's literally just get the money, pay off the debt, and you're done. It's not as satisfying of a story that I really wanted. But for me, Katana Kami is a fun game that I will always enjoy playing, just not for the narrative, and that's why it sits here at my number 70. As I said earlier on the last list, I love golfing in the form of gaming. For some reason, there's just something about it that resonates with me, even if the real game bores me to no end. So, let's take a couple elements that I really like in gaming, golf and roguelite, and mash them together and you get my number 69, Curse to Golf. The story is actually kind of sad. You play a professional golfer about to make the shot that will win him the tournament, only to be hit by lightning and sent to purgatory. In order to get back to the land of the living, you have to win at, you guessed it, golf. It's only 18 holes, how hard could it be? Well, explosives, creatures, and Sonic-like bumpers are all in place to make this the most hellish 18 you've ever tried to get through. Beyond the annoying course additions, you also have to deal with the titled curses, my personal favorite being Heavy Ball, which, as the name suggests, makes your ball extremely heavy so it operates different than normal, requiring a whole new strategy to get through it. As if this weren't bad enough, the Lords of Purgatory have another ace up their sleeve. You see, every time you fail, you have to restart the 18-hole course, but the stages change and they'll have a new layout each time, and that is what makes the game so much fun. What holds it back though is just how the roguelite implementation is more of a punishment rather than a learning experience. Once you fail, that's it, you fail and start over. It's not like a Dead Cells or a Hades where you retain some major aspects of your previous runs to help you get through the lower levels easier, you just start the 18 from the beginning again. It can lead to some very anger-inducing moments when you know missing one shot on course 15 means starting all over. That aside though, this is one of my favorite golf games I've ever played, and I highly recommend any roguelite fan giving it a try, and that's my number 69, Curse to Golf. Now here's a game that I am sure is higher on most people's list if this is your type of jam, and that is Stardew Valley, my number 68. Fans of life sim games are going to hold this and Animal Crossing high upon a pedestal of the best games they've ever played. And you know what? That's completely fair. This game is one of the most relaxing experiences you can have in gaming form. You play a character new to town who inherits a farm, and it's your job to make friends with the locals while also tending to your crops and animals. If you've ever played Harvest Moon, I would say that it's most likely comparable to that rather than Animal Crossing. Sure, Animal Crossing will be brought into the mix, but in Animal Crossing you get an island and build it up, where maybe a local or two interacts with you, but that's not really the hook. Here, just like Harvest Moon, your interaction and relationship with the locals plays a huge role in your overall experience, so for me, I would place that comparison more there. The one thing that the game has so well is so many different side quests and side activities to do. I found the fishing to be one of the biggest time sinks for me in the best of ways, and the money helped me purchase more seeds, and the loop continues. My main dig with the game is the look. I get that it's I get that it's going for retro, but I really don't like the retro graphics all the time, and I kind of wish this had the modern look of a Harvest Moon so that the world felt a bit more real, but when you look at the development of the game, you realize how much of a marvel this game actually is, even though it has a retro look. If you like farming sims or slice of life games, you cannot go wrong with my number 68, Stardew Valley. My number 67 is a shooter, and oh boy is it a fun one. It will instantly make you think of Doom or Quake, and even though it has some performance issues and lacks the gyro controls that make shooters on the Switch actually playable, it's still pretty high on my favorites list of all time. And I'm talking about Proteus, my number 67. Proteus is a very typical Doom clone in that it's basically a non-story narrative just aiming to give you that big beefy gun feel that helps you clear hordes and hordes of baddies. What sets this game apart from other clones of its ilk is just how tight it all feels. The movement feels good, the guns pack a punch, and each gun has a pretty gnarly secondary that makes them just that bit more fun to use and impactful, such as the pistol having a burst fire mode rather than a single shot. As is the case with most Doom clones, this game has a ton of secret rooms to look for, keeping each playthrough not only a run and gun blast, but also a smash your face into every walled surface, hoping that a door will magically open at the push of a button. It's not too terribly long at 10 hours, but honestly the replayability is pretty high due to a few branches in the level design, and the overall feel of the game lends itself to that repeated run. Honestly, I could gush on and on, but there is one big elephant in the room that holds this game back for me: the lack of gyro controls. This was a game ported to the Switch, and the lack of gyro controls makes it feel like just a bit of a slog on the Switch sometimes. The action is so fast-paced that it can be a bit difficult to handle aiming with just the sticks alone. It's not the end of the world, but most first-person shooter games come with gyro controls knowing the system's limitations, and the lack of it really holds it back here. I usually honestly just play it on my PC because playing it on the Switch can be a bit of a chore. That being said though, I have had a lot of fun blasting demons and monsters on my Switch thanks to a comfy grip, so I feel that I can comfortably land it here at my number 67. Astria Ascending is a game that I at first didn't really enjoy. I found the characters rather bland and the story kind of boring, but after a bit of time I decided to give the game another chance, and I fell head over heels for the gameplay and art style, completely letting it overshadow the game's weaknesses. This isn't a top tier AAA performance on the JRPG bucket, but for me, the way everything looks and comes together, it just works. It has some amazing visuals, like the art design here is top of the line, it is gorgeous. The combat being turn-based does exactly what it needs to in order to be engaging and complex enough to keep you hooked. However, what really keeps me here is the character leveling and skill building. It's pretty deep, and it offers a lot of thought when it comes to how you want to build each of the 8 demigods. Speaking of the demigods, this is where things start to push the game back towards the back half of the top 100. You meet them all in the very first cutscene, so there is no fun with exploration and meeting new faces. You're given the entire cast up front. Now this may sound great, but a huge issue is the feeling of being overwhelmed with choice. Who do I take? Who do I work on? Who's the best where? You don't really get any time with each character to learn this information. You're kind of just thrust with the choices at the start. It makes me think of one of my favorite games of all time that I'm currently playing thanks to the Virtual Console, Golden Sun, where you start with just Isaac and Garrett. You learn the basics, then you get Ivan, and you learn a couple more new overworld abilities such as mind reading and removing vines. And then shortly after you've used those a couple times, you'll get Mia, who then teaches you how to interact with water puddles and more. The drip feed of information helps, whereas I get a clogged feeling with Astria Ascending. Let alone another big problem is that all these characters are pretty bland and atypical. All that aside though, I still consider this a great JRPG that I'm glad I gave a second chance, and it is a lot of fun, and that's why it sits at my number 66 out of my top 100. My number 65 is a game that likes to pick you up just to push you back down, laugh at you while holding out another helping hand. Darkest Dungeon has always been a game that I love playing when I just want to get angry at the world. I played it a lot on my PC before the Switch port was available, and once the Switch version was released, I hopped on that train once more. If you've never played this game, you take a party of questionable heroes into the titular Dark Dungeons and try to gather treasures and experience so that eventually you can beat the boss of the game. However, the game has zero chill. If someone dies in the dungeon, they're gone forever, requiring you to now level up and train a whole new host of characters in their place. Almost every item that gives you a benefit also gives you a negative effect to balance it out, and the theme and setting is just dark and dim. The game suffers from being a port, and in my opinion, it's because of the UI. On the PC, there's just so much information in the UI that comes at you, and you need to digest it all to make sure you don't make any bad choices. It's pretty difficult to get all that information on the small screen of the Switch. Keeping in mind that I play the Switch mostly in handheld mode, and maybe this is different in docked play on a big screen, but for me, that was not my personal experience. The turn-based combat is just as much fun as it is stressful. You'll notice the cultist is constantly poking your cleric, even though the warrior is trying to taunt them, and you're worried that your cleric could meet an untimely demise, ending your run in a flash. It's deep, it's rich, and man does it keep you on edge. It only scores in the back 50 because I play it mostly on my PC, but any turn-based RPG fan or roguelike fan would be making a huge mistake not to at least give my number 65, Darkest Dungeon, a try. I know many of us are just feeling fatigued with Marvel and their constant stream of the same movies and same stories over and over. Good guy must learn something about themselves in order to beat the bad guy, yada yada. The narrative worked well at first when everything was fresh and new, but nowadays it's just overplayed. My number 64, Marvel Alliance Black Order, falls into that 64 slot because of this fatigue, not because of any particular failures on its part. I remember playing the original 2 Ultimate Alliance games back in the day, and they were just a fun Diablo-esque take on superhero games. Ultimate Alliance 3 plays very similar to its predecessors, and that's a great thing. You have a party of 4 characters from the Guardians to the Avengers to an entire team of web-slingers, and you can quickly swap between them to play whoever you feel like controlling. They all have unique abilities and ultimates, and chaining them all together feels really epic. The story is okay, you follow the Guardians as Thanos and the Black Order begin their quest for the stones, and it's pretty much game on from there. They meet new faces along the way, and by the end you stop the big bad. Really, that's the only reason it sits so far back, is it's a pretty muddling story with a pretty generic gameplay loop, but it is a lot of fun, and I would be remiss not to include it on my list somewhere. It's about as cookie cutter as you can get, but the battles and fun along the way is what keeps the game at my number 64 slot of all time. Coming in at number 63 is a game that I wanted to be so much higher. I really did, but I just can't. Advance Wars Reboot is one of my all-time favorite games, true, but also it's one of my biggest disappointments. I love the Advance Wars series, and technically this is just the first 2 games with a fresh coat of paint, but that is why I can't put it any higher. If you paint a toilet green, it's still going to be a toilet, and that's kind of what happened. The new look is divisive, and I know a lot of fans who don't like it. Personally, it doesn't bother me enough to make me care. What I really dislike here were the little to no effort put into the actual AI of the game. The AI is as dumb as rocks, and it's frustrating that the AI from the original game on the Game Boy Advance actually outsmarts the current AI that we have here. And that's a stretch because the original AI had bricks for brains. That all being said, I still enjoy playing the reboot quite a bit, especially the campaign. I love following Andy and the Orange Star Army as they try to unravel the mystery as to why Blue Moon has invaded their land, or investigate the big bad Sturm as he strives for global domination. I really enjoy the tight back and forth strategy that online play gives you when you find an opponent on your same skill level, albeit with invite codes and crap since they didn't give us any online matchmaking, and I love and adore the new soundtracks. Sadly, I don't think we will ever get a Dual Strike reboot, which I personally think was the best in the series, but if we do, I can see that climbing much higher on my list next time as that game perfected the formula. Even with all those things being said, my number 63 Advance Wars Reboot is still one of my favorite games of all time because it brought back one of my favorite games of my childhood. I don't think it's a surprise that everyone who has played a LEGO game has at least one of them in their top games of all time. At number 62, we have LEGO Jurassic World, which really should be the LEGO Jurassic Park collection since it's 1, 2, and 3, and World, but whatever. The LEGO games have an undeniable charm to them that stands out among all other platformers. The way they take a known IP and retell the same story with humor that often lands means that they stick with you long after you've ended your play. I was about 6 when Jurassic Park hit theaters, and I, along with countless other children, found a new love for dinosaurs. Sure, we had Land Before Time, but Jurassic Park and its realistic-looking dinosaurs really cemented a lifelong love for the ancient beasts. As such, I've enjoyed all the movies in the series, even the oddly paced 3 and the obnoxiously child-filled Jurassic World. The last one wasn't my favorite, but I never find myself outright hating a Jurassic movie because the dinosaurs are just so awesome. So when you take the first 3 movies and World and mash them into a LEGO game, naturally fun is going to be had. The jokes hit, and the animations are silly, and the big movie set pieces all hit perfectly in LEGO form. Honestly, the only reason that this game sits at number 62 is because there's another LEGO game higher on my list that I enjoy much more. Lastly, on today's list, we have a strategy game that in theme alone hits big on my favorites list, and that is Empire of Sin at number 61. I will admit that the Switch version isn't perfect. It has a few bugs, looks very washed out, and its PC cousin performs so much better. But sitting in my bed, working to become the big bad boss of Chicago just never gets old. You control one of the many gangs in Chicago during the Great Roaring '20s, and it's up to you to manage your outfit so you can maximize profit and ensure no one can go against you. Collecting shops and managing brothels, to battling rival gangs and acquiring newer and better gear for your team. Initially, when this game was released, it was in a terrible state, with some of the worst AI and bugs that would completely crash your experience. Thankfully, with some patching, it's gotten a lot better, so much so that I play it frequently with little to no issue. It's not the best sim game out there, but for me, the theme is what holds it in such high esteem. One of my favorite board games of all time is Scarface 1920, which is basically the board game version of this. The voice acting is also really well done, and the characters are all interesting. And since this actually takes place during a real era of history, it leads to a lot of questions and honestly a lot of Wikipedia searches. I really love this game, and although it's not perfect, the theme helps it slide comfortably into my number 61 slot. Well folks, thank you very much for joining me on today's list, my number 61 through 70. If you have a difference of opinion on my list, please let me know in the comments down below, but please do so respectfully. If you enjoyed the content, drop a like and sub. I know we had to do things a little different with my camera dying, but hopefully it was alright. And if you actually prefer this format of video, let me know that as well in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinion. With all that out of the way, thanks again for joining me, and have a great day.